Hey everyone, it's the Koopa Man. Happy New Year everyone, and Happy Year of the Horse. Or should I say, the horseshoe. As it seems lately, both extremes have been resembling more of each other than either of them really wants to admit to or even realize. What am I talking about? Well, a month ago, just after New Year's, an American Delta Force team under the orders of President Donald Trump infiltrated the Venezuelan capital of Caracas and extracted its dictator, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife in their sleep in handcuffs to be brought up on crimes against the U.S. Maduro already had a bounty placed on him due to various drug charges and narco-terrorist charges by the previous regimes, and the bounty was even increased by Joe Biden just before he transitioned power back to Donald Trump. And the ramifications of this were almost immediate. Russian and Chinese state sources began to panic as it was revealed that the BRICS alliance, an alliance between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and so on, were heavily reliant on Venezuelan oil, which would now fall back into the hands of the United States, their enemy. This threw a huge monkey wrench in the plans by the mainland Chinese to invade Taiwan, as well as Putin's plans to continue his invasion of Ukraine, effectively ending two wars, one before it even starts. In fact, as of recording, I should add this: Xi Jinping started internal conflict against the PLA, China's People's Liberation Army, and Putin had his authority questioned by his own government, leading him to start arresting politicians and making martyrs. Furthermore, Iran, which was already having active rebellions ongoing against its government, also lost the oil from Venezuela they got through Russia, limiting the Iranian Republican Guard's ability to fight back against the rebels. That, and the fact that the Americans acted so swiftly and severely, gave the rebellion a huge shot in the arm morale-wise. Within hours of the news of Maduro's arrests, protests erupted across the country against the Ayatollah and his regime. The Ayatollah and his cabinet have even allegedly fled the country to Moscow, and as of writing, apparently state police forces and members of the army have joined the rebels. With this move by the Trump administration, it cripples three of America's enemies and gives us access to Venezuelan oil, as well as the potential of Iranian crude, which would drop oil prices stateside immensely. All of this is a very good thing. Even left-wing liberals in Venezuela hated Maduro. Iran, China, and Russia are state enemies of the United States, and anything that cripples them is to our benefit. And it was done so cleanly, it asserts America's position as a global power in a time where people were asking if we have become a paper tiger. It should have been the one time both sides came hand in hand and agreed that everything that happened was good. The Ukraine-loving left, and the supposed America-loving right. At least, that's what should have happened. What actually happened was both extremes proceeded to go absolutely apeshit. Why? Well, you see, for the far left, this was a move done by Donald J. Trump, the orange man who is bad. And for the supposed far right, well, cue the music. For the far right, or as I dubbed them on Twitter, the other left, as they far more resemble other varieties of socialists than actual Christian conservatism, this move by Donald Trump and Delta that does nothing but benefit American imperial power and fuck over the communists is bad because it vaguely benefits the Jews in Israel. I'm not even kidding, that's their entire justification. It benefits Israel, therefore it's bad. And it's no different from the left who are crying because it was done by Donald Trump, and therefore it's bad. When this was happening, I observed on Twitter, now known as X, a huge number of extremists on both sides flinging their feces at the wall like the chimpanzees they are over the fact that something almost universally good happening for the world was benefiting the idol of their ire in some small way. Never mind that out of all of the leftists who were complaining, a good number of them hated Maduro before and were in support of the Biden administration condemning him, as well as were pro-Ukraine, and removing Maduro removes Russian war assets. And never mind that Maduro is brown, allegedly Jewish, and a communist. Because both sides see their ultimate enemy profiting from this, they are both irrationally irritated to the point of opening themselves up to mockery. After all, it's not every day where aristocratic utensil and short-fat otaku are hand in hand agreeing on the same things. Well, it is, but neither would be able to swallow their pride and admit that they are each other's own reflection. All of this shit happens because of derangement syndromes. Trump derangement syndrome for the far left, and Israel derangement syndrome for the other left. It is something I believe I talked about on my channel before, but things like this do bear repeating. To the far left, Donald Trump is the greatest evil to ever walk the earth, at least until J.D. Vance takes the presidency, and then he'll be the greatest evil. And therefore, everything that Trump and his administration has done is a great evil, even worse than the Austrian painter and his merry band of cross-dressers and homosexuals, and what they did in Europe in the 30s and 40s. So even though that Nicolas Maduro was an extremely anti-homosexual and anti-transsexual dictator, was extremely race-realist in his policies, and was so authoritarian even a number of tankies didn't like him, and starved and had soldiers shoot at, and I shit you not, rape his own people. The man operated rape camps where women who spoke out against his rule were gang raped by his men. He very much was not a leftist feminist. But in spite of all that, because he was taken out by Trump, he is suddenly the great saint of leftism. So much so that many of them have forgot Palestine, Gaza, and Hamas even exist, and Ukraine may as well be a distant memory. This is something that's sadly to be expected out of far-left reactionaries like Destiny or Hassan. It's their attitudes and rhetoric of everything Trump and his supporters is the ultimate evil that led to Trump being shot at twice and Charlie Kirk being assassinated. And even still, both figures have a presence on social media in spite of them openly radicalizing people into acts of terrorism. All because Elon Musk doesn't want to do the right thing, and all because Trump is their ultimate bad guy. However, this is not an issue exclusive to the left. As I said, the other left were also upset about this to an outrageous degree, because it benefited Israel, somehow. And therefore, Trump is a bad Jewish man who is orange. Figures like Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson came out screaming from the rafters how this makes America into the great Satan, to the point that you think they'd been appointed the new Ayatollah. This is in spite of the fact that Nicolas Maduro was a far-left communist, is somehow Jewish, is so brown you'd lose his picture in a bowl of Cocoa Puffs, and gave a lot of his influence to prop up globalist left-wing governments in South America. It's believed that he helped free Lula from prison in Brazil, which led to his corrupt ass stealing the election and spreading communist influence on the continent. But none of that matters. His skin color, ethnicity, or beliefs, because it somehow benefits the Jews. And why do the other left hate the Jews? Well, contrarianism mostly. But if you'll allow me to put on my tinfoil hat, anti-Semitism wasn't a thing outside of the Arab world largely until the newly Islamified Arab merchant traders made their ways into Europe. This would have been around the end of the first millennia AD. Because Islam preaches lying and deceiving the non-believer into becoming Muslim or carrying out the Muslim mission, it's not hard to imagine those traders began whispering little lies into the ears of the European kings and lords who take them into their courts, turning these people against what were otherwise peaceful Jews trying to mind their own business. It was the equivalent of if I moved to Lancaster, Pennsylvania in the 1600s and started convincing the English locals that the Amish are conspiring against them. And they believed me. And they started a whole ass religion around it. Basically, what is a conspiracy theory about how the Jews control everything and are plotting against Whitey may itself be a tapestry of Arab lies to trick the mentally weak Europeans into engaging in jihad against Muhammad's enemies for them. Think about it. It would explain why Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes have such sympathies for Islam. But back to my original point, these groups form their entire identity not around their own ideas, but around contrarianism of the people they hate the most. And that will never form a healthy and long-standing political platform. In fact, it's what damned the anti-Jacksonian Democrats back in the day. They didn't even last a single generation. But the thing is that in the short term, it's easy. And because we're beating a dead horse, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Cleese.
Seriously though, we've heard a lot about extremism recently, a nastier, harsher atmosphere everywhere, more abuse and bother boy behavior, less friendliness and tolerance and respect for opponents. All right, but what we never hear about extremism is its advantages. Well, the biggest advantage of extremism is that it makes you feel good, because it provides you with enemies. Let me explain. The great thing about having enemies is that you can pretend that all the badness in the whole world is in your enemies, and all the goodness in the whole world is in you. Attractive, isn't it? So, if you have a lot of anger and resentment in you anyway, and you therefore enjoy abusing people, then you can pretend that you're only doing it because these enemies of yours are such very bad persons. And that if it wasn't for them, you'd actually be good-natured and courteous and rational all the time. So, if you want to feel good, become an extremist. Okay, now you have a choice. If you join the hard left, they'll give you their list of authorized enemies. Almost all kinds of authority, especially the police, the city, Americans, judges, multinational corporations, public schools, furriers, newspaper owners, fox hunters, generals, class traitors, and, of course, moderates. Or, if you'd rather be an extremist on the hard right, no problem, fine, you still get a lovely list of enemies, only they're different ones. Jews. 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 And, of course, Jews. And upstart actors. Now, once you're armed with one of these super lists of enemies, you can be as nasty as you like and yet feel your behaviors morally justified. So you can strut around abusing people and telling them you could eat them for breakfast and still think of yourself as a champion of the truth, a fighter for the greater good, and not the rather sad paranoid schizoid that you really are.
Political extremism is very low IQ and monkey-brained. It appeals to our basest instincts. The thing I hate is bad, therefore kill it, is visceral. It's addictive. It's easy. And as Master Yoda would tell you, it's the path to the dark side. Giving in to anger may be enticing, but it has a bad habit of never getting anything done. And when you think about it, when has Nick Fuentes' fan base ever accomplished anything? Nazism is still extremely unpopular, and all they did in the past 20 years is, well, blow each other. The far left have it easier as they're already holding the wheels of power, but it does a fat load of good because in spite of all their whining, the leftist Biden and Kamala administration accomplished basically nothing. You would think with all that anger, these people would do something other than stew on social media. Okay, sure, as I said, it produced a few whack jobs shooting at Trump, Charlie Kirk, and some Jews at Bondi Beach, but by and large it has produced nothing but a bunch of social media addicts drunk on huffing each other's farts all day and largely doing nothing of value or merit with their lives or with their anger. Like any drug, it's a quick high that produces angry outrage posts and then it's followed by a crash out where they lay on the floor doing nothing. Political outrage junkies, as hooked and as wasted as heroin addicts. The whole lot of them. And the only way we solve this problem is if we starve it of the attention it craves, or send it back to the echo chambers away from regular society. The issue with old Twitter wasn't that it pushed out political extremists, but it did so in a partisan manner. The rules would have been fine if they were applied fairly, equally, and objectively. Hopefully we'll see the change with the year of the horseshoe ramping into full gear and the death of Charlie Kirk still fresh on people's minds. Everyone is now able to plainly see the consequences of social media influenced stochastic terrorism. But until then, we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully people will begin to understand that this isn't just a left versus right issue and take off their blinders long enough to admit that both extremes have a problem. The same problem even. That they're completely deranged and blinded by rage and spite for their perceived enemies, be they Donald J. Trump in America or Donald J. Trump in Israel. Oh, and just throwing this here in at the end, the poll board on 4chan was a CIA psyop formed the day that Epstein made contact with Moot. Anyway, suck it, poll tards and groypers, you all got played like a fiddle. Anyway, this has been the Koopa Man. If you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you're tired of seeing weirdos on both sides trashing America for not being a communist shithole or an ethno-nationalist shithole, be sure to talk about it in the comments as I'd love to hear your guys' takes. And until next time, game on.